A vision that changed my life forever. After I was discharged from the hospital, I went back to the monastery where other monks cared for me. I grew weaker and weaker and was lapsing into unconsciousness. I learned later that I actually died for 3 days. My body decayed and stunk of death, and my heart stopped beating. My body was prepared for cremation and was put through traditional Buddhist purification rites. Although I faded away in my body, I remember my mind and spirit were fully alert. I was in a very, very powerful storm. A tremendous wind flattened the whole landscape until there were no trees or anything else standing. Just a flat plain. I walked very fast along this plain for some time. There was no other people anywhere. I was all alone. After some time I crossed a river. On the other side of the river I saw a terrible, terrible lake of fire. In Buddhism, we do not have a concept of a place like this. At first I was confused and didn't know it was hell, until I saw Yama, the king of hell. His face looked like the face of a lion, his body was like a lion, but the legs were like a naga, serpent spirit. He had a number of horns on his head. His face was very fierce, and I was extremely afraid. Trembling, I asked him his name. He replied, "I am the king of hell, the destroyer." The king of hell told me to look into the lake of fire. I looked and I saw the saffron-colored robes that Buddhist monks wear in Myanmar. I looked closer and I saw the shaven head of a man. When I looked at the man's face, I saw it was Uzodilla Kayarnikan Sayadaw, the famous monk who died in a car accident in 1983. I asked the king of hell why my former leader was confined to this lake of torment. I said, "Why is he in this lake of fire? He was a very good teacher." He even had a teaching tape called "Are You a Man or a Dog?" which had helped thousands of people understand that their worth as humans is far greater than the animals. The king of hell replied, yes, he was a good teacher, but he did not believe in Jesus Christ. That's why he is in hell. I was told to look at another person who was in the fire. I saw a man with very long hair wrapped on the left-hand side of his head. He was also wearing a robe. I asked the king of hell, "Who is this man?" He replied, "This is the one who worshipped Gautama, Buddha." I was very disturbed to see Gautama in hell. I protested, "Gautama had good ethics and good moral character. Why is he suffering in this lake of fire?" The king of hell answered me, "It doesn't matter how good he was. He's in this place because he did not believe in the eternal God." I then saw another man who looked like he was wearing a soldier's uniform. He had a large wound on his chest. I asked, "Who is this man?" The king of hell said, "This is Aung San, the revolutionary leader of Myanmar." I was told Aung San is here because he persecuted and killed Christians, but mostly because he didn't believe in Jesus Christ. In Myanmar, the people have a common saying, "Soldiers never die, they live on." I was told that the legions of hell have a saying, "Soldiers never die, but they go to hell forever." I looked and saw another man in the lake of fire. He was a very tall man, and he was dressed in a military armor. He was also holding a sword and a shield. This man had a wound on his forehead. This man was taller than any person I have ever seen. He was 6 times the length between a man's elbow and the tips of his fingers when he stretches his arm out straight, plus 1 span of a man's finger when he spreads out his hand. The king of hell said this man's name was Goliath. He is in hell because he blasphemed the eternal God and his servant David. I was confused because I didn't know who either Goliath or David were. The king of hell said, "Goliath is recorded in the Christian Bible. You don't know him, but when you become a Christian, you will know who he is." Another king of hell then came to me. I also saw a being whose job is to stoke the fires beneath the lake of fire to keep it hot. This being asked me, "Are you going into the lake of fire too?" I replied, "No, I am only here to observe." The appearance of this creature stoking the fire was terrifying. He had 10 horns on his head and a spear in his hand that had 7 sharp blades coming from the end. The creature told me, "You are right. You came here just to observe. I cannot find your name here." He said, "You must now go back the way you came." He pointed me toward the desolate plain that I had first walked along before I came to the lake of fire. I walked a long time until I was bleeding. I was hot and in great pain. Finally, after walking for about 3 hours, I came to a wide road. I walked along this road for some time until I came to a fork. One road going off to the left was wide. A smaller road went off to the right-hand side. There was a signpost at the fork saying that the road to the left was for those who do not believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. The smaller road to the right was for believers in Jesus. I was interested to see where the larger road led, so I started down it. There were 2 men walking about 300 yards ahead of me. I tried to catch up with them so I could walk with them. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't catch up with them. So I turned around and went back to the fork in the road. I continued to watch these two men as they walked down the road away from me. When they reached the end of the road, they were suddenly stabbed. These two men cried out in great pain. I also cried out when I saw what happened to them. I realized the bigger road ended in great danger for those who traveled down it. I started walking down the Believers' Road instead. After traveling for about 1 hour, the surface of the road turned to pure gold. It was so pure that when I looked down, I could see my own reflection perfectly. I then saw a man standing in front of me. He was wearing a white robe. I also heard beautiful singing. Oh, it was so beautiful and pure. It was much better and more meaningful than the worship we have in our churches here on earth. The man in the white robe asked me to walk with him. I asked him, "What is your name?" But he did not answer. After I asked his name 6 times, the man answered, "I am the one who holds the key to heaven. Heaven is a very, very beautiful place. You cannot go there now, but if you follow Jesus Christ, you can go after your life is finished on the earth." The man's name was Peter. Peter then asked me to sit down, and he showed me a place to the north. Peter said, "Look to the north and see God create man." I saw the eternal God from a distance. God spoke to an angel, "Let us make man." The angel pleaded with God and said, "Please don't make man. He will do wrong and will grieve you." But God created a man anyways. God blew on the man, and the man came to life. He gave him the name Adam. Then Peter said, "Now get up and go back to where you came from. Speak to the people who worship Buddha and who worship idols. Tell them they must go to hell if they don't change. Those who build temples and idols will also have to go to hell. Those who give offerings to the monks to earn merit for themselves will go to hell. All those who pray to the monks and call them pra, respectful title for monks, will go to hell. Those who chant and give life to the idols will go to hell. And those who don't believe in Jesus Christ will go to hell." Peter told me to go back to earth and testify about these things I had seen. He also said, "You must speak in your new name. From now on, you are to be called Athet Payan Chintha Palu, Paul who came back to life." I didn't want to go back. I wanted to go to heaven. The angels opened a book. First they looked for the childhood name, Tit Pen, in the book, but they could not find it. They then looked for the name I had been given when I entered the Buddhist monkhood, Unada Panita Yeshantariya, but it wasn't written in the book either. Then Peter said, "Your name is not written here. You must return and testify about Jesus to the Buddhist people." I walked back along the gold road again. I heard beautiful singing, the kind of which I had never heard before or since. Peter walked with me until the time I returned to the earth. He showed me a ladder that reached down from heaven to the sky. The ladder didn't reach the earth, but stopped in midair. On the ladder I saw many angels, some going up into heaven and some going down the ladder. They were very busy. I asked Peter, "Who are they?" Peter answered, "They are messengers of God. They are reporting to heaven the names of all those who believe in Jesus Christ, and the names of those who don't believe." Peter then told me it was the time to go back. The next thing I was aware of was the sound of weeping. I heard my own mother cry out, "My son, why did you leave us now?" I also heard many other people weeping. I realized I was lying in a box. I started to move. My mother and father started shouting, "He is alive! He is alive!" Other people who were farther away did not believe my parents. I then placed my hands on the sides of the box and sat upright. Many people were struck with terror. They cried out, "It's a ghost!" and ran away as fast as their legs could carry them. Those who remained were speechless and trembling. I noticed I was sitting in a smally liquid and body fluids, enough to fill about 3½ cups. This liquid that had come out of my stomach and my insides while my body was lying in the coffin. This is why people knew I had indeed been dead. Inside the coffin there was a type of plastic sheet fixed to the wood. The sheet is placed there to retain a corpse's liquids because many dead bodies release much fluid like mine did. I learned later that I was just moments away from being cremated in flames. In Myanmar, people are placed in a coffin, the lid is then nailed shut and the whole coffin is burned. When I came back to life, my mother and father were being allowed to look at my body for the very last time. Moments later, the lid of my coffin would have been nailed shut and I would have been cremated. I immediately started to explain the things I had seen and heard. People were astonished. I told them about the men I had seen in the lake of fire and told them Only the Christians know the truth, that our forefathers and us have been deceived for thousands of years. I told them everything we believe is a lie. The people were astonished, because they knew what kind of monk I had been, and how zealous I had been for the teachings of Buddha. In Myanmar, when a person dies, their name and age is written on the side of the coffin. When a monk dies, the monk's name, age, and number of years he has served as a monk are written on the side of the coffin. I had already been recorded as dead, but as you can see now, I am alive.